Tonight's big story, several areas in the country remain under dangerous levels on the heat index. Is this a sign of global boiling that the United Nations warned about last year? We'll get insights from Dr. Mahar Lagmay of the UP Resilience Institute.
Transport groups filed a last-minute petition before the Supreme Court against tomorrow's deadline for the PUVMP consolidation. Along with that, business and workers groups urged the government to review the program and suspend the deadline.
And a Chinese ship sailed into the gunnery exercise zone of today's Balikatan drills in the West Philippine Sea, prompting the U.S. Navy warship to stop in order to avoid hitting the Chinese vessel.
Welcome to the show. I'm Regina Lay.
I'm Gretchen Ho.
And I'm Sean Yao.
It is as red as our couch. Dozens of areas in the country remain under the extreme heat, with Iba Zambales even making headlines this weekend for registering 53 degrees Celsius on the heat index. And again, heat index is a measure of how hot it feels when you factor in humidity.
The bad news is, it looks like we have to endure this scorching heat until at least mid-May. And we have mobile journalist Kyla Bacantan for the rest of the details on that. Kyla, what do you have for us?
Just in the Philippines, in other parts of Asia, and even in Europe, talagang ramdam itong matinding init ng panahon. It's worth noting that as early as last year, the United Nations has warned that a so-called era of global boiling has started. Emerging on top of the list of areas under intense heat index here in the country is Iba Zambales, which recorded 53 degrees Celsius on Sunday. Take note that this is not the actual temperature in that area, but what the body feels in relation to humidity. For context, your typical order of a hot coffee ranges from 49 to 60 degrees Celsius. Today, 36 areas, including Metro Manila, are still experiencing dangerous levels of heat index. Not as bad as in Zambales yesterday, but enough to cause problems. The country has logged some 34 cases of heat-related illnesses, and at least 6 people have died from it.
The sooner maramdaman ng tao yung condition, the better alis ka kaagad dun sa environment na yun, mag-cool down ka na in a air-conditioned room or in some area. For people experiencing heat cramps, you have to stop your activity. Kailangan mong umalis dun sa area where you are and transfer to an area na cool. And then the next one, you may have to remove your clothes and then use basang bimpo and then hydrate. Now, ang tip ko sa hydration is very simple. Kumuha ka ng isang basong tubig, kumuha ka ng a pinch of salt at ilagay mo doon sa basong tubig, meron na yung electrolytes. Kasi pag ang sweat natin, meron ding sodium. Yung cause ng cramps is really the lack of sodium sa body.
But in the Philippines, may have to endure this heat a few more weeks until mid-May.
This 2023-2024 El Nino could be one of the worst kasi meron pa din pinaka-worst pa rin po yung 97-98. And kung titingnan po natin in terms of climate impact, so ganun din yung maraming na-breach na mga maximum daytime temperature during the 97-98 El Nino as well as 2015-2016 strong El Nino. And ngayon, medyo nalalampasan din yun. Kung ikukumpara natin in terms of sectoral impacts, mas madaming impact nung mga nakaraan 97-98 kasi may mga early interventions tayo and strategies ngayon. So, ibig sabihin, mas nakapag-prepare tayo sa ngayon.
As we've mentioned, other countries are also experiencing sweltering heat, leading many to ask if what we're encountering now are unusual levels brought by climate change. The United Nations has already declared last year that global warming has ended and we're now in the era of global boiling. Ladies, with the El Niño's damage to agriculture exceeding 4 billion pesos and the back-to-back weeks of dangerous heat indices, it does pose a question on whether we are prepared to enter a new era of global warming, one that can disrupt our economies and everyday lives. Back to you.
Thank you for that update. That was mobile journalist Kyla Bacantan. Just to be clear, when you say heat index, is that the real feel?
Yes.
What you feel?
Yes. Factoring in
usually
humidity.
that's higher.
Yeah,
Yes,
usually
correct.
it is
Correct.
higher,
Because
especially
humidity
here.
makes it
So
hotter.
much hotter.
Yeah.
I was listening to Storycon a while ago. Miss Ami said that it's forecasted to reach 57.
Yeah, on the heat index.
On the heat index,
On the
right.
heat index.
Yung sa US kasi masikat yung term na real feel. That's what they call it. But yeah, it's
Kaya
the same
pala kasi yung
Oo.
sinesearch mo
Sa
eh.
mga app, di ba?
Oo.
That's what you find.
You know what's trending nowadays? Because I opened my e-shopping site. The electric fans, the mini fans.
Tingnan mo yung isa,
I mean,
it looks like a small, wala siyang blades.
I don't think they work too good in this heat. I mean,
Honestly, when you open the
kasi
fan, it
mainit
just
din
blows hot
mainit
air.
din yung air, exactly.
Yeah.
Tapos
The
meron
air
pa
is
isa
also
yung
hot.
revolving na fan na
The air circulator.
Yes.
Which I have. But
Which
the air is
sort-
still hot.
It sort of works when the aircon is on. It helps, I think, save power. That's the claim of the person who sold it. But anyway, let's do a check on our water supply because that's not doing very good either, and neither are our reservoirs. Major dams in the country have fallen either below their normal operating level or have fallen below their normal operating levels. This includes the Angat Dam, which supplies more than 90% of Metro Manila's water requirements. Same goes over at the Magat Dam in Cagayan Valley, which is the source of irrigation for some 85,000 hectares of farmland in Luzon. Over to power, both the Luzon and Visayas grids were put under yellow alert once again as several power plants remained offline.
At yellow alert po, in-emphasize namin, wala tayong brownouts. Ang ibig lang sabihin po ng ating yellow alert is that we have sufficient capacity to supply for all the demands. Ang problema lang po natin dyan is we don't have enough reserve if the biggest power plant connected to a specific rig ay biglang magkaroon ng unplanned outage. So like for example, yung kanina nabanggit ko sa Visayas, 160 megawatts is not the biggest facility in Visayas. So kayang suportahan nung sistema, kaya nag-yellow alert lang siya. Hindi siya bumagsak ng red kaagad. Dahil lang red, ibig sabihin, kulang na talaga both the supply, the reserve to fill up yung demand. No? So dito po, wala pa tayong nakikitang brownout as long as we can maintain the yellow alert to a certain level. Kaya lang kailangan namin ng coordination and cooperation of our consumers.
In response, President Marcos has said that the government is working on long-term solutions to the country's power problems, adding that this is not a made-up crisis.
Definitely, it's not an artificial crisis dahil talagang the power systems are overloaded. Yung pagtaas ng meron kaming mga plano, mga strategy para hindi na magtaas ang presyo ng kuryente, at least for now. Sa NGCP, patuloy yung ating sinasabi sa kanila na magtayo na sila ng mga kanilang mga transmission lines na matagal nang inaantay, pati yung mga submarine cable ginagawa na natin. Matagal na dapat na ginawa ito pero nakaligtaan yata ng mga iba. Kaya ngayon lang tayo naghahabol.
And because of this shortage, consumers may have to brace for higher power bills in May, well, at least for Meralco customers. The power distributor said power consumption this year has already exceeded forecast.
If we look at the historical data of price movements, usually summer months are the highest in terms of both demand and prices as well. It goes hand in hand. So it goes without saying na pag mataas ang demand, talagang may pressure for prices to go up. That possibility of higher prices dahil mas mataas yung presyuhan sa merkado kung saan kami kumukuha din.
Not surprisingly, Meralco's earnings are up. Its first quarter core profits jumped more than 11% to just a little over 10 billion pesos. The company announced that today. Full-year income for Meralco is expected to hit over 40 billion pesos. Meanwhile, Chair Manny Pangilinan urged the government to allow new plants to be built to ensure energy security. Recall that the DOE under then-Secretary Alfonso Cusi slapped a moratorium on new coal-fired power plants in 2020.
We need a more permanent solution. So the best time to do it is now. I mean, authorize new plants. No, there will be. It's not an easy question to answer. Is it? Sabi nyo nga, is it coal? Is it gas? Is it all renewables, yun, dapat pag-usapan yun so that we can move forward. The private sector can move forward to invest, di ba? Kami, we're willing naman to expand the existing gas plants we have in Chromite, di ba? I think there are plans to build a new gas plant in Chromite, and we're prepared to support that. I'm sure the other two investors, the Boitises and San Miguel, would be prepared to do that.
Here to talk us through the science behind all of this is UP Resilience Institute and NOAA Center Executive Director, Dr. Mahar Lagmay. Dr. Lagmay, good evening. Thanks for joining us tonight.
I just unmuted myself. Good evening. Good evening.
Magandang gabi. Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening. You heard our reporting just now. First off, the UN has been warning that the era of global boiling has arrived. In fact, they've been warning about that since last year. And true enough, this year alone, and it's just end of April, the heat has been shattering records. Talk us through the implications of that and what you're seeing in your research.
Okay. You just mentioned the era of global boiling, no? Dati tawag natin dyan global warming. So ginawa lang nilang global boiling yan. I think that's a hyperbole para lang ma-emphasize, maging exaggerated yung point, no? Not to be taken actually literally. Actually sa totoo lang talaga naman tumataas yung temperature, no? And it's gone to a point na kailangan ma-exaggerate at ma-emphasize natin na may kailangan tayong gawin. Kaya from global warming, sabi ni UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres na global boiling na ito, no? Para umaksyon na tayo kasi we don't want the temperatures to further increase. And last year, na-record nung July 2023 yung highest temperatures ever since 120,000 years, no? And we have to be concerned because there are consequences with continued increase in temperature, which what we used to call as global warming, and now the UN has called it global boiling.
Okay, Mahar, right now sobrang init. Every year we've been breaking records. I started noticing this nung COVID, no? Parang ang init, 'di ba? Nasa bahay ka lang. Every year painit ng painit tuwing summer. Now it's the hottest. Will next year continue on this trend as well as the years after that? So painit na lang ba talaga tayo ng painit? Where is this going?
Okay. Gaya nga ng sabi ko, no, painit talaga ng painit, and gusto, according to the Paris Agreement, na yung ating increase ng temperature ay malimit natin ng 1.5 degrees above ng pre-industrial levels na temperature by 2030, no? Pero pataas ng pataas na mabilis. And going back to your question, ano ba yung possibility na tumaas pa ito, no? And according to the WMO, World Meteorological Organization, it's unlikely that July's temperature record will prove to be one-off, no? Sabi ko kanina na it was the highest temperature on record last year in 2023, prompting that renaming from global warming to global boiling para ma-alert tayong lahat at umaksyon tayong lahat. Indeed, the organization estimates that ng WMO na 98% probability that at least in one of the next 5 years, there will be become another hottest ever recorded, no? So hindi lang masusurpass yung 2023 kasi pataas po ng pataas. And all of this is a consequence of what we are doing to our environment. We burn fossil fuels, we release emissions to the atmosphere, yung mga greenhouse gases, particularly yung mga CO2, mga CO2 na binubuga ng ating mga tambucho ng kotse, pag-burn ng fossil fuels, which causes all of this increase in temperature na ngayon ay nararamdaman natin na palagi natin sinasabi, heat index na ganito, ang init talaga. And we don't want this to continue to rise. We want to stem it. We want to prevent this from happening. We have to reduce the emissions ng greenhouse gases, burning of fossil fuels, and we have to go clean mga renewable technologies na hindi nagbe-burn ng fossil fuels.
Doctor, what do you think about our shift, our transition into solar energy? I've been looking into this and I've been seeing a lot more players now in the industry, small players providing cheaper options. Is that a viable solution at this point? Building more solar farms, heading into that direction, not just solar but also the other renewable energy supplies that we can tap into?
Yes, marami naman ng mga clean and renewable energies. It's not just solar, meron pa tayong wind, meron tayong yung tidal energy na dapat kasi yung mga technologies na ito, doon tayo nag-i-invest para makapag-transition tayo into these clean and renewable energies. No? We don't want the temperatures to continuously increase kasi the consequences are very grave. I just came from the APEC meeting in San Francisco and I heard Ban Ki-moon talk about what we're doing to the environment. Ang sinasabi nila, the politicians should listen. Everybody should listen. We should act now because there's only planet A. We only have one planet. There's no planet B. At kapag hindi natin ma-reduce yung ating emissions ng greenhouse gases, the burning of fossil fuels, there will come a point that global warming will be too intense that the consequences are irreversible. That is what we want to prevent.
Right.
So, kailangan natin i-broadcast ito, malaman ng mga tao, we're at a critical stage, but we can still do something about it to reverse the trend. So, yun po, it's very important that we do something now and we act now.
Understood, Dr. Lagmay. Balik lang natin ng slide no, sa science and the data. Of course, ang sabi ng Pag-asa, iinit pa through May. We already expect that. The other thing that I'm really worried about personally is that ang sabi rin nila, ang possibility na magyari after nitong extreme drought, El Nino spell that we're experiencing, bigla daw kakabig at magiging La Nina na malakas, which means biglang bubuhos ang mga ulan. What are you seeing in NOAA? Have you been also observing and preparing for this kind of scenario to happen?
Cyclic naman po, no? Gusto ko namang maintindihan ng mga tao that yung El Nino and yung La Nina phenomena, they're natural, no? They've been there for the longest time. But yung climate change, no, yung gawa ng global warming, tapos nag-change yung panahon, na-aggravate po niya yung El Nino at saka La Nina. And when we talk about El Nino in the Philippines, that means that correlates to droughts, no? Wala masyadong ulan. Yung La Nina naman ay maulan, no? And climate change will aggravate all of these El Nino and La Nina effects, no? And corresponding hazards. Yung drought, for example, pag El Nino, pag La Nina, yung severe weather na malakas ang ulan, that will bring about or will trigger hazards like floods, more landslides, bigger landslides, and possibly storm surges. Now, lahat po yan ay dapat inaasikaso natin. We should be thinking about this. And there are two ways to think about how we can solve this problem. Sa science po, ang lengguwahe po dito ay dalawa. Climate change mitigation at saka yung pangalawa ay climate change adaptation. When we talk about mitigation, babawasan natin ng CO2 emissions, babawasan natin ng greenhouse gases para ma-stem natin yung global warming. Kasi yung CO2 at greenhouse gas, yun ang parang cover sa atmosphere na nagpapainit sa ating mundo. That is called climate change mitigation if we reduce the greenhouse gases.
Right.
Climate change adaptation means that we have to adapt. And as early as now, we have to plan for the adverse impacts of climate change. Maybe it will come now, maybe it will come tomorrow, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, or 20 years from now. But we have to plan our communities for these severe impacts of climate change. May it be floods, landslides, severe drought, etc.
The reality, though, is that renewable energy is not going to be enough to replace base load energy at the moment, even if you combine solar, wind, hydro, all of these renewable sources. The fact of the matter is we still derive more than 60% of our power sources from coal and natural gas. So there's a balance that needs to be struck there, right? So renewables are not enough. On the other hand, we are a growing, developing economy. We aspire to be a middle income economy in a few years' time. Where's the balance that we need to strike between trying to limit greenhouse gas emissions by transitioning to clean energy and trying to keep the population, growing and developing and, fed?
Yes, that is true. No? Kasi yung ating contribution ng greenhouse gases sa Philippines ay a very, very small percentage. No? The main contributors are really China, yung Europe, Americas, yung mga developed countries, no? That release a lot of greenhouse gases. And what you're saying is that we have to develop as well. We have to run our industries or power our industries with all of these energy sources. And we cannot just rely on these renewable sources. That is why people are calling for climate justice, that all of these developed countries actually should help us develop our program for renewable energies, no? So that we can still be able to power up all of our industries for us to develop and for us to have production by getting us to have that technologies that Europe has, that America has, and give that technology, that knowledge, for us to be able to have these alternative sources of energy. And aside from that, all of these technologies and resources that can be able to trickle down and mainstream into the communities, the local government units plans and development plans, so that we can adapt to the adverse impacts of climate change. So that is true what you're saying. It is consistent with what I said about mitigation and adaptation. And that is what people are clamoring for. That is what the Filipinos are clamoring for, climate justice, because we are the hardest hit by the climate change impacts, one that is brought about by the activities of these development countries throughout the centuries.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much for your insights tonight, Dr. Mahar Lagmay, Executive Director of the UP Resilience Institute and NOAA Center.
Well, up next, transport groups run to the Supreme Court in a last-ditch effort to halt the PUV modernization program, whose final deadline is tomorrow. The details when we return.
Welcome back. You're watching The Big Story here in One News.
On the eve of the final deadline for jeepneys to consolidate, transport groups again asked the Supreme Court to issue a temporary restraining order against the PUV modernization program. And we have News 5's Gerard de la Peña for that story.
Yes, Gretch, tomorrow, April 30, is the deadline for jeepney drivers and operators to consolidate for their franchises. But transport groups led by Piston hopes to avert this through another filing before the Supreme Court. Transport groups joined by Bayan Muna Party List filed a supplemental petition against the PUV modernization program today, asking the High Court to issue a temporary restraining order against it. In December 2023, transport groups had filed a petition with the SC asking for a TRO against several issuances related to the program. This petition, however, along with others, are still under deliberation. Without a decision on the petition, the DOTR said that they would proceed with the implementation of the modernization program, including the deadline for PUV operators to consolidate and join cooperatives by April 30, 2024. Aside from the petition, Piston said it will continue its planned 3-day strike, which began today. Transport Group Manibela expressed their support to Piston, but is still undecided if it will push through with their Tigil Pasada on May 1.
Wala sir, wala talaga kaming strike ngayon. Unless, mamaya makarinig na naman kami ng pang-aapi doon sa aming kasamang Piston. Yan yung ayaw namin na nagtitrigger minsan kung bakit gusto na naming mag-strike. Hindi din namin sila pinababayaan.
Manibela and Piston maintained their appeal to the government to expand their current franchises for another 5 years, claiming that the modernization program has rendered several cooperatives bankrupt.
Bakit po kami mangungutang pa ng milyon? Hindi ho namin kaya. Tulad po namin may mga anak po kami, mga pamilya. Paano ho kami magbabayad pa po kami ng milyon?
Aside from jeepney groups, a group of riders from a delivery app and TNVS riders or drivers are planning a transport holiday on May 1, Labor Day. This action is in protest of the High Commission's delivery platform's take from them, as well as the lack of job protection, including insurance. Gretch, with no TRO in sight for the PUV MP, the DOTR said that LTFRB offices will continue to accept applications until 10 in the evening tomorrow, April 30. Gretch.
All right, thanks for that update, Gerard de la Peña. Well, some business groups released a statement calling on the government to review the said program. They also want the deadline of the consolidation suspended indefinitely. And joining us tonight is Sergio Ortiz Luis, President of the Employers Confederation of the Philippines, one of the members of the Leaders Forum. Welcome to the Big Story. Magandang gabi po.
Magandang gabi sa inyong lahat. Gretchen, Ron at Regina.
Mr. Sergio, your group is singing a different tune. The Employers Confederation of the Philippines is calling for the indefinite suspension of the deadline of the consolidation. Why did you come up with that statement, and what other solutions do you see?
Well, we came up with this statement that even before, when COVID was going down, we already made a statement. When we saw the drivers were there begging in the streets, and then riders have no rider, we said, just give them back the routes. And but they did not follow that. They kept this PUB modernization is not invention of this administration. This was from the last administration, together with other things that we did not like, that they did. No? But I guess the government is just continuing it, since it has been there already in the last stage. But we feel that this is not the way to do it. We believe that once the deadline comes and they have no alternative, I think there will be a problem. There will be a lot of jobless people, estimates about 30,000 something, and there will be people who will not be able to ride. There will be not enough rides. And what we're saying is we agree that there will be modernization, that it should come with alternatives that will. The one that they're doing is they're not prepared, and I think we'll be surprised when this happens that medyo magkakagulo na naman. And you know, in the past, when we try to give work, we even have just what we call EEA, emergency employment Now, we're throwing out of jobs a lot of people, and for what? For modernization that is not even prepared.
But Mr. Sergio, hasn't
Maybe
the government given enough time? Technically, parang medyo indefinite na nga po yung deadline dahil usog na usog. Don't you think that the government has already given them enough time to be able to consolidate, to find other solutions, to find alternatives, to be able to find funding?
And also, technically, this program started
you know,
2017
the
under.
alternative people have. I cannot blame them for striking because they have no other way to do. But what can they do? They will lose their jobs. They will. Yung substitute is imported. Is not even jeepneys. They are vans. They're trucks actually. And they cannot afford it. 2.5 million to 3 million. How can these people afford that? And those who are going to do this once the mass transport gets into the act underground, and then what will they do with their investment? Again, we will drive them away and take away the franchise. It's like to us, it's like government saying bawal na sari-sari store because marami ng ano yan. But that is not the answer.
Mr.
I mean,
Ortiz
the
Luis?
market should be the one to determine eventually whether they should be competitive, whether they should be working, not dictated. You don't dictate people to lose their jobs.
We understand your sentiments, Mr. Ortiz Luis. However, there's also the other side of that fence. And of course, the government will always claim na they are also defending the rights and maybe the comfort of the riding public as well. Hindi po ba ako personally, sometimes I think about it, I think that maybe the drivers also do deserve, kumbaga, an upgrade to be in a cooperative kind of setup, to be paid the monthly salary, to not worry about the boundaries, and for the riding public to have nice jeepney units or modern jeepney units to ride. Is that not feasible in your eyes? In your opinion, is the whole program, kumbaga, really unfair, that much unfair for the jeepney drivers and operators?
Well, let the riding public choose if there is anywhere to choose with jeepneys or whatever is available. What I'm saying is, take away the jeepneys. I'm sure they're not. The riding public will have difficulties because I don't think we are prepared.
When you say we are not prepared specifically, what exactly do you mean by that? Is it the fact na maybe pagka natuloy na nga, meaning the day after tomorrow, April 30, biglang magkakagulo-gulo na lahat? Do the business groups feel na walang...
There won't be enough rides.
That is your the opinion of the three business groups.
There will be lines that will not be served. There will be routes that will not be served. We saw that at the beginning when they closed the lines before, after and the business was picking up. We had difficulties. People could not ride. So what is the answer? Free rides in the rail. How can the government in the train? How can the government continuously do this?
Does your group feel like you have a productive dialogue with the transport department? Do you feel heard? Do you feel like your ideas are being listened to?
Well, we are not the proponent of this. We are just supporting them. But take this in consideration. We have companies that can manufacture jeepneys. We even have one who is already manufacturing e-jeepneys.
Yes,
Why are not we
correct.
supporting them? Why are we importing expensive one that the operators and drivers can afford? Why don't we help the local industry? After all, jeepney is an iconic ride that is known over the world. That is Filipino. We're so mad when there are iconic statues. There are even chocolate hills. with the town permit. Why are not we worried about the jeeps? Do we want them to disappear?
Sir, I think the government through
For another 20 years.
yeah, just to set the record straight, I think the government through House Speaker Martin Romualdez did commit to prioritizing locally made modern jeepneys, e-jeepneys. So I'm not exactly sure on the details of that program, but they have said that they will prioritize the locally made ones.
The local manufacturers can do only 5,000 because they have no support. 5,000 jeepneys. But if we support them, I'm sure they can do whatever is the available in the imported ones. Why are not we doing that? Why are we prioritizing imports? They're not even jeepneys. They're not. So can you blame the ones who cannot afford to buy or to consolidate that they have no choice? We are just driving them out of their work. When there is no, I see that the option they're putting in is not enough. The option is not enough for these people to survive.
Okay, the transport groups filed more TROs with the Supreme Court, Mr. Ortiz Luis. You also released a statement just 2 days before the deadline. Let's say, no, hypothetically, matuloy at makuha ninyo yung hinihingi ninyo and ma-stop nga or ma-postpone na naman yung PUVM deadline. What then happens? Do you guys have a plan, some proposals on how to maybe make the whole program more inclusive?
Yes. What we say is, let's prioritize supporting the local industry. And let's prioritize also supporting whatever is necessary so that we can develop the industries. Nobody's left behind. After all, why will development leave behind all these people? There's so many of them. And I think properly studied, there can be workable plan in the modernization, but it will be probably near to market driven, the necessity, not dictated.
Right, loud and clear. Thank you so much for explaining your side with us, President of the Employers Confederation of the Philippines, Mr. Sergio Ortiz Luis.
We're going to pause for another quick break for now. Right after that, today's Balikatan Naval Gunnery Exercise was interrupted by a Chinese warship. More on that when we return. Keep it here.
Welcome back. You're still watching the big story here on One News. 2 Chinese ships were spotted tailing vessels participating in the Balikatan Exercises out in the West Philippine Sea. And one of these boats even made its way to the Balikatan area, thwarting the gunnery exercise. Mobile journalist Julie Baiza has the details.
As you can see in this video taken this morning, this ship is so near the Balikatan site that you would assume it is part of the maritime drills between the US and the Philippines. But in fact, that is China's Dongzhou AGI 793. This vessel was spotted near the Philippine Navy's BRP Ramon Alcaraz at 6 a.m. This is the same Chinese boat spotted near the Balikatan area in the West Philippine Sea on Saturday. Over the weekend, at least 2 Chinese ships were seen near the drill area in separate instances.
If it gets close about 2 nautical miles or if it impedes our navigational safety, then we will challenge them to give way on our path.
Another Chinese warship entered the premises past 9 in the morning. This one is a Chinese destroyer vessel that came as close as 9 nautical miles from BRP Ramon Alcaraz.
We are monitoring them and recording their presence and reporting it to higher headquarters.
Despite this, at around 10 in the morning, the Philippine and U.S. Navy still got into position for the drills. They were scheduled to conduct today their gunnery exercises, where 2 Philippine and 2 American boats will participate. According to the Philippine Navy, these exercises aim to enhance their precision and targeting skills as they will be tasked to aim at a target called a killer tomato. The USS Somerset was first to fire at the target, followed by the BRP Davao del Sur. BRP Ramon Alcaraz fired shots into the water. But when it was the turn of the USS Harper's Ferry, the Chinese vessel with the bow number 793 entered the gunnery exercise area. The American ship issued consecutive radio challenges against the Chinese boat, but the Chinese side ignored them. Though the gunnery exercise was interrupted, the Philippine Navy says the drills further strengthened the skills of the navies.
This joint exercise is conducted to show the unity of the 2 nations in promoting regional peace, security, and stability.
The Balikatan Exercises will continue until May 10. As earlier reported, the French Navy is also participating in the multilateral maritime exercises of Balikatan 2024. Mobile Journal Julie Baiza, We Are One News.
Now, speaking of Balikatan and remembering things that went viral just before this, the Cybercrime Investigation and Coordinating Center, or CICC, believes that the recent deepfake video of President Bongbong Marcos has nothing to do with the exercises between the Philippines and the U.S. They say that an individual and not a nation was behind the fake audio of President Marcos that made it appear as though that he was ordering the military to act against a foreign country.
On the get-go, no, definitely not. Kasi pagdating dyan, it's an exercise we've been doing for so many years, right? And for the creation of this one is nagkataon lang na nandito sila, but it's not because of the Balikatan.
The Philippine National Police has already identified the possible source of the fake audio. But House leadership is still calling for an investigation. House Senior Deputy Speaker Aurelio Gonzalez Jr. said in a statement that they should not let, quote, criminally minded persons wreak havoc on our national security.
Earlier today, President Marcos attended the 10th anniversary event of the Comprehensive Agreement on Bangsamoro at Maguindanao del Norte. There, he gave out a strong warning to people attempting to disrupt Bangsamoro's first parliamentary elections set in 2025.
Let this also serve as a warning to those who may plan to threaten and derail this upcoming election. Huwag nyo nang isipin yan dahil ang kakalabanin na ninyo ay ang pamahalaan.
For context, in next year's polls, the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao will hold its first ever election of members of the Bangsamoro Parliament. The first elections were supposed to be held back in 2022, but because the Bangsamoro Electoral Code was only passed last year, this was moved to 2025. Those who will be elected in 2025 will replace the Bangsamoro Transition Authority, which currently serves as the BARM's interim government since 2019. However, there are some groups calling to extend the BTA's term for another 3 years and move the elections to 2028. This prompted the president to give the warning you heard earlier. He also assured residents of BARM that the electoral process will be honest, orderly, and credible.
Well, aside from those who may be planning to derail the BARM elections, Marcos also issued a warning to separatist movements.
To those who preach the discarded and debunked ideology of dismemberment, the people will reject your selfish agenda.
So I'm guessing that warning or those warnings are coming because last month, if you can recall, former President Rodrigo Duterte did float the possibility of a possible Mindanao secession, but of course, many leaders in Mindanao themselves rejected this proposal.
They quickly reacted, issued a statement on that, I remember. And even the President Marcos, has also rejected this in the past.
Not that we're trying to say that they're a separatist movement,
Yeah.
of course, but this is just laying down the timeline of it.
Well, anyway, ako excited ako makita yung Bangsamoro elections. It will be their
The first parliamentary ones,
yes,
that's
and
right.
you know,
Long time coming.
Long time coming.
Right.
And the Bangsamoro Transition Authority, the BTA, they've been there for a while. I think ready na rin sila for their own governance. I just want to see it play out before I get too old.
I pray that it would
Successful,
be peaceful,
orderly.
Yes.
Right? Peaceful transfer of power.
Kasi sabi nila doon, dahil yun nga, parang they are on the verge of electing their new leaders, medyo may konting power struggle. Because now, there are new arrangements in the political, I guess, hierarchy in the BARM. So
I guess nature of politics in the BARM is always, there's always feuding. So these are the things that I think everybody...
Nature of politics
in
everywhere,
general,
especially
in
when you're in that period of when you have to transition of power, when there's a handover of power. Of course, people would be jockeying for position. But again, our best hope is that they will have a peaceful and orderly election.
But the difference here with the BARM, the new BARM government, is that they're much more represented by different provinces within the region as compared to the former government that was negotiated with the Philippine national government. So yun yung sinasabi nila dito, mas
may representation.
Medyo parang mini parliamentary system within the autonomous region. So let's see. Anyway, it's so near 2025. Hopefully everything goes smoothly. Not just for the BARM elections, but also for our midterm elections. But we are...
Courtesy of Miru.
Courtesy
for
of
now,
Miru systems.
at least. Kahit na may...
If matuloy. Right? Tingnan natin. Ang daming moving parts, right? But ito, nandito na to. Our big picture tonight. Okay, let's roll that. Right, so ano ba yan? Those are new toys for the military, which will boost the country's air and surface surveillance. Ladies and gentlemen, meet the TPSP-14ME, a mobile long-range surveillance radar from Japan. This radar provides high-resolution surveillance of aerial and naval threats like aircraft, drones, and maritime vessels. This is the first of 4 units worth 5.5 billion pesos procured by the Defense Department as part of Phase 2 of the AFP modernization program.
Looks pretty sleek.
So ito, galing sa Japan. Inaantay ko yung maiiwan from US.
Hindi, ito yung mga procurement.
Balikatan.
Yeah.
What did they promise?
Sabi ni
We're hoping.
Ang tawag dito, ni Executive Agent Colonel Mike Lohico, antayin daw na. Let's ask him again after the Balikatan about the weapons.
There might be some, like a pamana. May mga ganon. Like
because it's going to cost them more money to ship it back.
Well, the more controversial are the medium-range missiles.
That's right. That's right.
That China is worried about.
And the question is whether they're going to leave that behind or not.
Correct.
Well, ladies, there's still one more week of Balikatan exercises going on. I'm sure lots more happening, lots more surprises for us. But for tonight, that's it for the big story.
We are One News, all sides, all the time.
Thanks for tuning in. Have a good night.